Welcome to Alice Just Alice 55. You're listening to an AI-narrated audiobook of my original work, The Child the Sea Kept, written by Alice N. Smith. The chapter playlist is linked in the description below. Now let's begin. Chapter 3. Age 10. The Surgeon's Table. The surgeon trusted bodies more than men. Men lied as easily as they breathed. They lied about pain, fear, fever, debts, drink, women, courage, and whether they had followed orders. They lied with blood running down their sleeves and bone showing white beneath torn skin. They lied because pride was often stronger than sense, and sailors had more pride than teeth. Bodies did not lie. A pulse told the truth. A wound told the truth. Fever, rot, swelling, breath, blood, all of it spoke plainly if a man knew how to listen. The surgeon had spent enough years aboard the ship to understand the language of damage better than the language of comfort. He could set a broken wrist while the deck pitched beneath him. He could dig shot from a shoulder by lantern light. He could tell by the smell of a wound whether a man would curse him tomorrow or be sewn into canvas by dawn. So when Eva first began appearing near his table, he did not think of her as a child. He thought of her as a wound that had learned to stand. She was 10 by then, narrow and pale, with dark hair cut at her jaw and eyes that seemed too still for anything living. The crew had learned to make room for her without admitting they did it. Men shifted when she passed. Voices lowered. Dice stopped briefly in their cups. She belonged to the captain, though no one said it exactly that way. The surgeon saw her mostly when blood was near. That was what troubled him. Children avoided the surgery when they could. Grown men avoided it too, unless pain dragged them there by the throat. The room was low-ceilinged and close, tucked below deck, where air moved badly and smells stayed longer than mercy. It stank of vinegar, old blood, salt, boiled linen, lamp oil, and fear. Eva stood in the doorway as if none of it touched her. The surgeon had noticed her before, at the edge of a crowd beside the galley steps, half hidden near the companionway while the captain gave orders. She watched everything, but watching was not unusual on a ship. Men watched one another constantly. They watched for insult, weakness, profit, storm, knife, command. Eva watched differently. She watched as if storing the world for later use. The first time she entered his room during work, he was sewing a gash across a sailor's forearm. The cut was ugly but clean, made by a boarding axe that had missed the bone by luck or poor aim. The sailor sweated, cursed, and tried not to look at the thread passing through his skin. Eva stood just inside the door. The surgeon glanced up. Out. Eva did not move. The sailor twisted his head, saw her, and went paler. What's she doing here? Bleeding less than you, the surgeon said. Hold still. Eva's gaze moved from the sailor's face to the wound, then to the surgeon's hands. The surgeon tied off the stitch. This is no place for children. Eva looked at him. He waited for her to leave. She did not. The sailor let out a sharp breath as the needle went in again. Saints, keep her away from me. The surgeon said, If you keep squirming, I'll let her sew the other half. The sailor went still. Eva blinked once. The surgeon did not know whether that meant amusement. He doubted it. He doubted Eva wasted herself on amusement. When the sailor was bandaged and gone, the surgeon wiped his hands and turned to her. Do you want something? Eva said nothing. The surgeon studied her more closely. Are you hurt? Eva gave him nothing. He set the bloodied cloth aside and tried again. Then why are you here? Eva's eyes shifted to the tray of instruments. The surgeon followed her gaze. Bone saw, forceps, needle, hook, knife, all washed, sharpened, and laid in order. You like sharp things? He asked. No answer. That is not a promising quality in a child, the surgeon said. Still nothing. The surgeon sighed. If you are going to stand there, do not stand in the doorway. Men bleeding through their shirts dislike being delayed. Eva stepped aside. That was how it began. After that, she came whenever the ship gave him work. Not always, not predictably, but often enough that the surgeon began to expect her, small, silent, and solemn near the shelves, where the lamplight reached her only in pieces. He told himself he allowed it because she was quiet. That was not entirely true. He allowed it because she was useful. During a fever outbreak, she remembered which cup had been used by which man. During a storm, she caught a jar of spirits before it rolled from the shelf and shattered. When he asked for clean linen, she found the least stained bundle without rummaging. When he needed pressure held against a wound, she obeyed exactly. The first time he put her hands to blood, he expected her to flinch. She did not. A sailor had split his scalp open when a loose block swung wild during rough weather. Blood ran down his face in bright sheets, making the wound look worse than it was. He groaned and gripped the table hard enough to whiten his knuckles. The surgeon pressed folded cloth against the cut, then glanced toward Eva. Hold this here. She came at once. Not there, the surgeon said. Here, harder. If he complains, that means he is alive enough to complain. The sailor looked up through blood and rainwater. Don't let her touch me. Eva pressed the cloth exactly where she had been told. The sailor hissed. The surgeon leaned close with his needle. There, you see? Alive. Eva did not smile. Her hands did not shake. Later, after the sailor had gone, the surgeon washed the blood from his fingers and watched Eva wash hers. She did it carefully, as if cleanliness was an order and not a preference. The surgeon said, "Blood does not trouble you." Eva kept washing. Most children dislike it, the surgeon said. She looked at the water. Most grown men dislike it too, the surgeon added. Eva dried her hands on the cloth he offered. The surgeon asked, "Do you dislike anything?" Eva looked at him then. For a moment he thought she might answer. She did not. He told himself she was damaged. It was the simplest explanation and likely true, though simple explanations often left the most important parts untouched. The sea had taken her family. Men before the sea had left their own marks on her. The captain had brought her aboard a ship full of knives, guns, rot, greed, and superstition. If the child had locked some door inside herself, the surgeon could hardly blame her. Still, locked things made him curious. Curiosity was a weakness in a surgeon. It led a man to cut deeper than needed. He tried not to do that with Eva. He failed. "What do you remember?" he asked her one afternoon while grinding willow bark into powder. Eva sat on the floor beside a crate of rolled bandages, sorting them by size. She was better at it than the boy he had assigned the task before her, mostly because she did not talk, complain, or steal the cleaner strips for gambling debts. At his question, her hands paused. The surgeon saw it. He lowered the pestle. Before the ship, Eva resumed sorting. "Do you remember your mother?" Eva gave him nothing. He watched her hands continue sorting the linen. Your father? Still nothing. The surgeon's voice quieted. Your name before the captain gave you one? Eva placed a narrow bandage atop a stack of narrow bandages. The surgeon regretted the questions and disliked himself for regretting them only after asking. He set the pestle down. You need not answer. Eva did not look at him. The surgeon rubbed at the bridge of his nose. I did not mean to pry. At that her eyes lifted. The surgeon almost laughed. Yes, yes, I know. I did pry. Badly. Eva lowered her gaze again. He returned to the willow bark. You are an unforgiving little thing. Her mouth did not move, but something in her face shifted by the width of a candle flame. Perhaps not amusement. Perhaps almost. The raid came 2 weeks later. It was meant to be simple. A merchant brig, poorly armed and riding low with cargo, caught before dusk under a wind that favored the pirate ship. Simple work often killed men. The surgeon had learned that long ago. Men respected danger when it announced itself with cannon fire. They grew careless when profit looked easy. By nightfall, his table was full. The first wounded man came down with a ball through the meat of his thigh, carried by 2 others who were shouting over each other. The second had lost 2 fingers. The third had a knife wound under the ribs and breath that bubbled wetly when he tried to speak. More followed, stumbling or carried, cursing, praying, demanding rum, demanding the captain, demanding their mothers. The surgery filled with heat. Set him there, the surgeon ordered. Not on the floor, you idiot, on the table. Tie that cloth above the wound tighter. If he keeps kicking, sit on his legs. Eva appeared near the shelves. The surgeon saw her and should have ordered her away. Instead, he said, clean linen, top shelf. No, not that. The folded roll beside it. She brought it. Hold the lamp higher, the surgeon said. Eva held it. The surgeon glanced from the wound to her hands. Pressure. Here. Eva pressed. A man screamed. Eva did not blink. The surgeon glanced at her once, sharply, searching for some sign of horror. There was none. Not revulsion, not fear, not fascination either. Her face held only attention. It unsettled him more than panic would have. He worked until time lost shape. Blood slicked the table, the floor, his wrists, the cuffs of his shirt. Men came and went, some left on their feet. Some were carried out breathing. Some were carried out covered. Eva remained. Once, when a sailor thrashed too hard and nearly sent the instruments clattering to the floor, Eva caught the tray with both hands. A scalpel slid toward her thumb. She tipped the tray just enough to stop it. The surgeon snapped, "Careful!" Eva looked at him. "Yes," he said, irritated because she had been careful. "Continue being careful." Near midnight they brought in the young one. He was not the youngest aboard, but he still had softness in his face when fear stripped the bravado from it. He had taken a blade low in the belly. His hands were clamped over himself, red leaking between his fingers. The surgeon knew before they set him down. Not enough time, not enough cleanliness, not enough luck. The young sailor knew it too. "Fix it," the sailor said. The surgeon cut away his shirt. "I will do what I can." "No," the sailor said, breath catching. "Fix it." Eva stood at the surgeon's shoulder with the cloth in her hands. The young sailor saw her and tried to smile. "Don't look, little miss." Ava looked anyway. The surgeon worked. He cleaned, pressed, searched, packed the wound, lied when necessary. Truth was owed to the dying, but not all at once, and not when it would steal the last strength from their lungs. The young sailor's hand fumbled at his neck. "Charm," he whispered. The surgeon said, "Leave it." The sailor's fingers kept pulling. Eva reached before the surgeon could stop her. Around the sailor's neck was a bit of polished bone, tied with cord, carved roughly into the shape of a gull. It was slick with blood. Eva freed it from where it had tangled in his collar and placed it in his palm. The sailor closed his fingers around it. "My sister made that," he said. The surgeon did not answer. The sailor looked at Eva. "Had a little sister." Eva's face did not change. The surgeon said, "Breathe slowly." "I am," the sailor said, though he was not. Eva stepped closer. The surgeon almost told her to move back, but the young sailor's eyes had fixed on her. "She quiet too?" the sailor asked. No one answered. His breath hitched once, twice, then stopped. For several seconds the room held still. The surgeon pressed 2 fingers to the sailor's throat. Nothing moved beneath the skin. He exhaled through his nose. "Take him out," he said to the men waiting by the door. One of them swallowed. "Is he—" "Yes," the surgeon said. The men wrapped the body in silence and placed him to the side out of the way. Ava stepped back to let them pass. Her face was empty. That angered him more than it should have. When the room had cleared, the surgeon turned on her. "Does nothing touch you?" Eva looked at him. He hated the question the instant it left his mouth. It sounded too much like the crew, too much like fear pretending to be judgment, but exhaustion had stripped him down to bone. "You stood there through all of it," he said. "Blood, screaming, dying, not a tremor, not a tear. Are you made of stone, child?" Ava did not answer. The surgeon wiped his hands with a cloth already ruined. "Go then." Ava went. He finished the night alone. By dawn, the wounded had been sorted into those likely to live, those waiting to prove him wrong, and those who would no longer require his opinion. The surgeon sat on a stool beside his table with his head in his hands and blood drying beneath his nails. A soft sound came from the far side of the room. He looked up. Ava stood beside the wrapped body of the young sailor. The surgeon had not heard her return. She had a damp cloth in one hand. With the other she held the little gull charm. For a moment the surgeon did not speak. The charm was clean. Every trace of blood had been wiped from the carved bone, even from the grooves where wings had been scratched by an unskilled hand. The cord had been untangled. Ava set it carefully on the dead sailor's chest, just above where his hands had been folded beneath the canvas. Then she stepped back. The surgeon watched her. Ava did not cry, bow her head, or whisper a prayer, but she had remembered what mattered to the dead boy when the surgeon had only remembered the wound. The shame of that moved through him slowly. He stood, his knees cracking, and crossed the room to stop beside her, looking down at the wrapped body. "You heard him," the surgeon said. Eva's gaze remained on the charm. "About his sister," the surgeon added. Eva blinked once. He swallowed. His throat felt raw, though he had not screamed. After a while the surgeon said, "I should not have spoken to you as I did." Eva looked at him then, and he braced himself for accusation, anger, confusion, anything. She gave him nothing. Of course she did not. He tried again. You understood. Her eyes moved back to the sailor. The surgeon followed her gaze. You understood loss, he said quietly. You simply did not perform it for me. The words settled between them. Above, the ship creaked into morning. Men shouted over sails. Someone laughed too loudly, the way living men sometimes laughed near death because they had escaped it for another day. The surgeon looked at Eva's hands. They were small, red at the knuckles from washing, clean now except for a crescent of dried blood beneath one nail. Go to the galley, he said. Eat something. Eva did not move. He sighed. That was not a request. At that, something almost like recognition crossed her face, and she turned toward the door. Before she left, the surgeon said, Eva. She paused. He had not used her name often. Perhaps that was why she looked back. The surgeon nodded toward the wrapped body. Thank you. Eva stood in the doorway for one heartbeat longer. Then she was gone. The surgeon remained beside the dead until the light changed. He had spent his life learning what bodies told him, what blood meant, what pain confessed, what fever promised. He had thought grief had its own shape too. Tears, shaking hands, broken voices, men clutching at charms, and mothers and gods. He had been wrong. Sometimes grief was a child wiping blood from a little gull because a dying boy had said his sister made it. And sometimes the deepest wounds were the ones that did not bleed where anyone could see. Thank you for listening to Chapter 3 of The Child the Sea Kept. If you'd like to continue the story, the chapter playlist is linked in the description below. I'll see you in the next chapter.